So this is another interesting case that contrasts with the last case. Both properties have been damp proofed. Here we have a proven source of water, a leak from Thames water on the outside of the property, some high damp meter readings around the electrical plugs that have cut through the damp proofing treatment, and at the top of the damp proofing treatment. It illustrates that if you have a genuine source of water, that damp proofing treatment isn't effective. There's also dampness on the other side from penetrating damp from the neighbour's gutter.
So we've got salts above about...
Here I'm using a protimeter radio frequency damp meter where 999 is damp, below 300 is dry, and in between varying degrees of dampness. You'll see there's very damp around the plugs where there's been a cut through the damp proofing treatment. Probably the treatment was around the plugs because they presumably were there in the first place, and above the damp proofer's slurry.
I was asked about whether the water could cause any electrical problem. I'm obviously not a qualified electrician, but you don't want to have too much water. However, if it's plugged in, the worst can happen is you can get a short, and then it would trip on the fuse box. Obviously you don't want to touch something that's wet, but it's not currently wet.
We can see calcium sulfate salts on the wall blistering through. That will be from dampness originally, but once they start blistering, it's a form of crystallization behind the paintwork. Once they start blistering, they form micro cracks, and then any rain that forms on them or drops onto them will be absorbed deep into the wall, and they self-perpetuate. So it makes the situation worse. It creates dampness within the wall that could increase the dampness in the wall. They have to be dealt with, but the primary cause is the leak. Here are some thermal images where blue is colder than orange, and you can see the damp proofing. You can see the clear line of where the damp proofing treatment had been. It's interesting to see that damp proofing treatment is lower on the left-hand side, looking from the road, than the right-hand side. And this suggests that the dampness has been very long standing. So Thames Water approached recently about a 60 litre per hour leak, which they fixed recently. This was only a month ago. A wet wall will take 6 to 9 months to dry out, and longer if it has coating as you have on the outside and the inside, because your slurry will actually slow down the process of drying out the wall. That's the damp proofer's slurry. Here I'm demonstrating that there is no ongoing internal leak. That's very important to establish. I also show that there are high damp meter readings above the damp proofer's slurry on the right hand side, and we trace that back to a defective gutter on the neighbour side. Other matters, there is high humidity in the subfloor void. The subfloor ventilation has been blocked in part by the extension. The dampness, now it's been repaired, should mean that the subfloor humidity should reduce. There's also a bit of a smell there, and I wonder whether the leak has caused some issue with your drains. You should monitor the subfloor humidity and consider the issue of a potential rot. There's also high damp meter reading in the bathroom. This comes from poor ventilation. Here we see in the top floor bathroom where the vent is just being directed out into the loft. Do you see that round circle, the middle one? That's the top of the vent. It's just blowing straight into the loft. That's going to cause mold and condensation in the loft. It should be ducted out. The vent should be extended to half an hour once that's done, and likewise the downstairs should be vented for half an hour. In summary, this is caused by the leak made worse by past damp proofing treatment and penetrating damp.